Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Paul Gunson from the Ark. For those of you who may be watching this for the first time, the Ark, spelled ARC, stands for Are You Ready for Change? I use the biblical example of the Ark as in being prepared for what's coming, and I believe that we are facing some extremely difficult challenges as a humanity in the years to come. Now, that's from a biblical point of view. I'm not going to talk about that today. What I would like to do today is introduce you to my guest, Taz Thornton, but I'm going to give you a little bit about who she is and what she is, how I came to know her, and then we're going to ask her a few questions and see what she's got to have to say. And if I know Taz as well as I think I do, she's got a lot to say. So first of all, welcome Taz. Let me tell you, Taz is a best-selling author. She's an inspirational business speaker and has been a 3 times TEDx speaker. She's a consultant for confident speaking, personal brand and development in business. She's an award-winning coach in the UK, and she was voted the best, and I say again, the best female coach in 2018. She's been on numerous talk shows. She's been in numerous posts in various newspapers, articles, magazines, podcasts. She's even got a voice in America. So she's quite versed in what we're doing with podcasting. So can I ask you, Taz, welcome first of all.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
Okay, what I'd like to do, Taz, is if you just spend a few minutes, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I'd give you an intro there of all the official stuff that you've done, but who is Taz Thornton? And tell us a little bit about yourself, your TEDx experience, your books as an author, and basically where you see your voice in the world being.
Wow, there's a big question. We've only got 30 minutes for the whole show, I think, haven't we, Paul? Blimey. Okay, who am I? I'm someone who believes passionately that everybody has a purpose. There is a reason for us all being here, and even if we don't know what that is, it's their quest for it. I believe that we are all, let me put this another way, it doesn't matter if you see yourself as a tiny, tiny cog in a giant machine. If you take an old-fashioned watch before digital, a good old-fashioned wind-up, and smash it and take the back off and take it all to pieces, if you miss out one of those tiny cogs, it will not work. And that's the way I like to see not just humanity, but all of species. We're all here, we're all needed, we're all here for a reason. So don't give up, keep going. And the hashtag catchphrase I use a lot is Unleash Your Awesome, because I believe we all have a well of awesome ability, awesome potential, and we just need to learn how to tap into that. I didn't wake up like this. I didn't come into the world like this. I went through an awful lot of baggage of my own. I went through a really nasty spell of domestic abuse. I went through depression. I went through breakdown. I went to the point where I thought my only way out was out of life, and took as many chances as I could to try and, in inverted commas, accidentally kill myself, which resulted in me breaking my back in 3 places. And that's kind of where everything started to turn around for me. And I recognised that if I was going through all of these difficult times and I didn't know how to handle them and what to do with them, how to even benchmark them, there would be other people going through struggles. And instead of having my own pity party and going and sitting in that world of pain, I could use what I'd been through to help other people. So that's where I come from today. I'm trained in everything from neuro-linguistic programming through to enterprise mentoring. I'm an extreme empowerment coach. I've trained with the same guys that trained Tony Robbins to do firewalking and glass walking, all kinds of crazy stuff like that. I spent 10 years learning from shamans and medicine people. I was raised C of E, so there's an interesting mix there. So I'm quite okay with you talking about your biblical stuff. That's fine. It's not my path, but I understand it, and I absolutely respect everybody's absolute right to come from their own belief system. And I think one of the things that is wrong with the world is that we have lost the ability to discuss. We spend far too much time trying to decide why somebody else is wrong, rather than trying to find the common ground, accept and celebrate our differences, and learn and grow together.
Brilliant.
How's that in a nutshell?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you did well considering that wasn't rehearsed.
I don't do rehearsed stuff, but
yeah, no, I kind of agree, even though, as I say, I do come at it from a biblical angle. I believe we're facing what I believe is not the end of the world, certainly up to the second coming of Christ. I believe we're in a period called the tribulation. I think what we see in the world today, in what is, I believe, almost, I say almost, chaos, is that there are people like you and hopefully people like me who want to try and bring people back to that. Let's talk. Let's be open. Let's stop blaming. Let's stop, as you say, finding fault. Let people talk. What do you think? What do you believe? What's ready? So let me ask you this question, Taz, because it's something that you just said. What in that moment of the, what I would say was perhaps your depths of despair, what was your pivotal moment? What was it that said, hold on? I'll give you a quick example. When I lost my son in 2006, I went through 7 years of depression. Now, what was interesting at that time, I was teaching mental health. I'm a mental health coach. I'm a qualified mental health coach. And I didn't even see that I was suffering from mental health, because I went through a depression over my son. And I'm telling other people how to get out of depression and look at your mental health. So where was your mind at that time? And what do you think was your pivotal moment where you kind of went, hey, hold on, light bulb moments. Enough's enough.
I think there've been a few of those for me, Paul, but there are a couple that I could certainly pick out. I absolutely am with you with the not realising how desperate our own situation is while we're in it. A mate of mine I used to work with used to come up with a horrid saying, but it kind of described it. You're like a rat in the sewers, just going through the motions every day. And don't think about that too much, because suddenly you're like, ugh, really? but it's absolutely right. When I talk about going through my breakdown, I didn't recognise that I'd been through a breakdown until afterwards, until I was out of the other side of it. Even when I was going out of the door every day and thinking, how can I do my best to die today? I didn't recognise, I still wouldn't have called myself suicidal. It was just, I'm trying to get through every day as best I can, and I don't really want a tomorrow because of the things that I was facing that I didn't think I wasn't equipped to deal with. So the first pivotal moment for me was after I'd had the car accident that broke my back. I didn't recognise I'd broken my back, to the point where I went into work, and I was news editor for a series of local newspapers at the time, and our editor, bless him, good old-fashioned editor called Dave, because all the best old-fashioned editors are called Dave. Dave said I needed a nice stiff brandy, and he was going to take me to the pub. So lunchtime came, and we went to the pub, probably about a mile and a half walk. He bought me a double brandy, same length of walk back, and it got to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I thought, oh, my neck's a bit sore, my back hurts. Fast forward, called to the doctor, got told to go into hospital, A&E, X-rays, and suddenly I was put on a flat bed and had my head packed in sandbags. And I kid you not, I lay there for 9 hours without anybody telling me what was going on. There's an awful lot of things that can go through your mind when you're in that state of mental flux, and you're there for 9 hours with nothing to stare at but polystyrene ceiling tiles. They looked like the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel by the time I'd finished. I was creating all these images to stop me thinking about why I was there. And when they finally uttered those two words, spinal and damage, something happened then. It sounds such a cliche, but I genuinely went from hopeless to hopeful in that moment. And that's when I started calling out to whoever was listening, I know I said I wanted to die, but please just let me live, let me walk. I'll do something with all of this stuff you've given me. I'll use it to help other people. And I was really lucky. I'd crushed 3 of the vertebrae. When we say broken back, we imagine this great big severance and the spine sliding apart, but actually I'd crushed 3 of the vertebrae. And I was really lucky with where they'd been damaged, because they were in such a position that I didn't need traction. I just walked out of there with a stick for soft tissue damage, and a neck brace in order to rest, and a sling for soft tissue damage too. The only thing I'd actually broken, apart from the car, which was fatal, was my back. But I very quickly forgot all of those promises I'd made and went back into my comfort zone of goal setting and career progression. And it was years later, after I'd got out of that relationship, I'd had to go into hiding. There were death threats. It was really, once I decided I wanted to live, I didn't think I'd live. I thought I'd die through that. I really did. This guy had an arsenal of guns, some legal, some not so much. and I genuinely didn't think I'd get out of it. But it was years after that I'd got to the point where I was in my early to mid 30s. I was at the top of my tree in terms of my career. I'd settled down, new part of the country, partner I absolutely adored, still do. We've been together for 22 years now. And I found myself just going through those motions again. I was going to work every day. I was UK director of what at the time was one of the world's biggest multinational publishing companies. And on paper, it looked great. You know, I got the nice big car, wage packets, bonus checks. I laugh at that now as someone who's self-employed. Bonus checks? What? But I was desperately unhappy. You might say I was hiding behind the pinstripes. But it took until 2006, I think, for what I refer to as my 8 weeks of hell, my real long, dark tea towel of the soul to happen. And in the space of 8 weeks, my uncle died. My dad died. He'd been in hospital, came out of hospital. We thought, great, Dad's better, and he dropped dead that night. Load of family debt came to light I hadn't been aware of, none of us had, which meant that the financial future I thought I had was gone in an instant. I was only child, trying to ring round, do the few. Many of us will know what that's like, not a pleasant situation. Also dealing with that issue of, do I come out now? Because my mum had always said, I don't care who knows when your dad dies. Well, now I'm in a situation where I desperately need my partner with me. I desperately need to be held up. But is now the time? Do I still keep hiding as mum had wanted me to do for so long, or do I come out now? Do I allow myself to be publicly cared for by my other half? And then in that same period of time, my wife was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and then made redundant. And there was lots of other stuff that wouldn't be fair for me to go into because of the family and people who were still around. But all of that was in an 8-week period. And at the end of that, when I found myself kind of crying and rocking and hiding under my mum's dining room table, I recognised that something had to give and it couldn't keep being me. But even with that, back into goal setting mode. And I spent it. I worked, in retrospect, I can look back and say I worked through a breakdown for 4 years with nobody knowing. I'd put the makeup on, put the suit on, get to work, get through to lunchtime, call home, cry, come home, cry, self-medicate with a bit too much whiskey. Next day, same thing. And eventually I engineered my redundancy and dug my way out with a teaspoon. But what the pivotal moment there was finding the one thing that filled me up. And I found that the one thing that actually made me feel worthwhile and human in that scenario was helping other people, even to the point of finding people in other departments at work who were perhaps underperforming, about to be booted. And I'd say, just let me try. Let me just have one more go. And every time I'd managed to find what fired them up and turn them around, and they turned into model employees. You know, I'd been following my spiritual path for a long time. And as I've said before, I think we go into semantics far too much with faith with a small f. And I think so long as our intention is right and we have an attitude of help as many as we can and harm none, we're probably all walking up the same mountain but up different paths. And so that's what I did. I started to do as much training as I could in various different modalities to help other people. Trained in neurolinguistic programming, trained in enterprise mentoring, trained in the empowerment stuff. And by the time I left, if you build in the shamanism as well, which I followed more than anything for the really, really powerful - deliberate, because it's about being filled with power, not having power over something. You know, the Danes talk about Macht and Kraft, power to, power over, and that's really important to me. There's such a powerful set of tools for self-development and personal development on the medicine path that I followed, which all come down to self-responsibility. So by the time I got out of there, I had my own experiences, and of course, School of Life teaches us so much. I had all of the top level management experience and all the training you get there, everything from, you know, team building to conflict management. I had the NLP, I had mentoring, I had extreme empowerment, and I had this body of tools that I'd learned from those medicine teachers too. So by the time I got out, I had everything I needed to start helping others. So the first pivotal moment was the car accident and the broken back. The second pivotal moment was when I got interrupted before I went over my parents' banister with my childhood karate belt around my neck, which we won't have time to go into here. But again, it was one of those moments where I believed that all the stuff other people were going through, I was at the centre of it all, and if I was gone, they'd all be better. But the third one, the biggest one that really made me refocus, was when all of that happened and I went through that period of time, those 4 years in limbo pretty much. And at the end of that, recognizing that I was here, I genuinely believed I'd been put here. My mission was to help, to motivate, to inspire as many people as I possibly could, to show them that if I'd been through all these difficult times and survived it and found a way through that was much brighter than they could too, that maybe I'd hit that metaphorical brick wall so that they didn't have to. I got to the point where the mission of helping and inspiring and motivating others was bigger than me. And when you get to the point where the mission is bigger than you, that will get you out of bed, it will get you past all your own BS, and you'll be able to achieve something phenomenal.
Excellent. Yeah, and I kind of, other than the recent event of my wife passing, which has kind of took me now onto a slightly different path, because for the first time in my life, I'm making decisions based on me rather than other people. And I've had to look at that and check that and think, hold on, no, I've still got a daughter, I've still got 5 grandchildren that I need to make sure that, one, I'm there to support them, and given our current environment, which I'd like to go on to, if I may, is given now that I think there has been a paradigm shift in the world now is being moved into a new era with this whole COVID-19, whether you believe it is or isn't. I'm not going to debate that because that's take too long. But given just this last week, and I'm going to mention George Floyd, the Black American who was killed, murdered, in my opinion.
Absolutely dreadful
by a white officer who had an agenda, as far as I was concerned. Taking all of what you've learned and all your experience, and now applying that to the just the last sort of 3 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever you want to look at. What would be your advice, given there is still racial tension, there is still inequality in the world, and you've already mentioned it around sexuality. In fact, I listened to one of your talks that keeps inspiring me, where you mentioned that you weren't saying that you were gay, you were quite straight. It was actually your wife that was gay, which I found quite amusing. But given all those subjects, you know, sexuality, relationships, mental health, encompassing the whole bag, if you like, what advice would you be giving to people right now, given where we are right now in the moment, COVID-19, mental health, lockdown, the whole shebang? What would you be saying if you were doing a TEDx talk right now? What would you be telling people to do to kind of get them over that, again, pivotal moment, moving forward, setting goals, having hope, be it whether you're religious or not? What would kind of be your message?
I think where we all seem to think we need to go is talking more. I think we've got that slightly skewed. I think we need to listen more, and I mean deep listening, because we all think that we can listen. There's that old phrase, isn't there, that, you know, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, using in that order. And we're big on saying we need to talk more, but I think we need to do deep listening more, and that means giving. One of the tools we learn on the medicine path is the first attention, which is whatever it is you're doing, give it 100% of your attention. And if I'm listening to somebody else, I want to give them 100% of my attention, which means not listening to react, not listening to respond. It means parking all my baggage, learning to come out of judgment and perhaps more into discernment, and learning to absolutely listen to what they're saying. That's where we fall down, because when we start talking, because we've lost that art of discussion, we've lost that art of debate, we no longer seem to be able to have a two-way conversation without trying to convert the other person and walking into that argument with I'm right, you're wrong, and I need to get you across to my way of thinking. If I'm going to have a conversation with somebody, I don't want to bring across to my way of thinking. I want to understand why they are thinking what they're thinking, why they believe what they believe, and learn from that. And I would want the other person to give me that same level of respect, compassion, understanding, and empathy. So, for instance, you and I, in another scenario, could sit down till the cows come home and talk about religion, faith, spirituality, and I wouldn't be trying to get you to across to my boat, and you wouldn't be trying to get me across to your boat. We'd just be able to listen with fascination and learn from one another and find those similarities and celebrate the differences. I think that's where we're going wrong. So to touch on one of those TEDx, I think the one you're talking about is A Dangerous Rainbow, which was the most recent TEDx that I did. And when I was asked to talk about inequality and sexuality for that talk, because I've been invited to all three, I wasn't sure I wanted to go there because, you know, I've never, apart from the family issues we touched on briefly earlier, I've never made a secret of the fact that I live with and love and I'm married to another woman. It doesn't define who I am. It doesn't define who I am any more than my pink hair defines who I am, or having written books defines who I am. I am Taz before anything else. I'm Taz before being gay. I'm Taz before my spirituality. I'm Taz before my career. I'm me. Nothing's going to define me. But unfortunately, we have become so polarized in our views as a people, particularly I think in the Western world. We've become so polarized that we've started walking around with hammers and looking for nails. So I was actually afraid when I was asked to do that talk, and I didn't know if I'd do it or not. But then I had a word with myself and talked to my partner about it and talked to some trusted mentors and advisors about it. And I came to the conclusion that I can't encourage people to feel the fear and do it anyway, and to walk that talk if I'm not doing the same. And so I did this talk and I based it around the liberal blind spot. What do I mean by the liberal blind spot? And you could attach this to any phobia, any ism, really, any obia or ism. And that's that those of us who don't have an issue with sexuality, with gender inequality, with race, with religion, those of us who are broad-minded and just are for team human, if you like, and that's not wanting to disregard any of the areas within that. I think that's another thing we do a lot. You know, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter and somebody says all lives matter, you know, somebody said the other day on Twitter, that's tantamount to if somebody says their partner's dying from cancer, saying, well, everybody's dying. No, of course all life is sacred, but there are still pockets within that where we are not being good enough, where we are absolutely being appalling, and where we need to be a lot better. So we need to stop making blanket statements. But this liberal blind spot I talk about is those of us that don't have an issue assume that everything is okay. You know, I don't have an issue with people who are LGBTQIA, being Q, however many letters we want to apply to it now. I don't have an issue with anyone from any racial background, any creed, any all walks of life. But that doesn't mean that it's okay. Just because we don't see it inside our bubble, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So that's what that talk focused on. And I talked about some of the issues where I had experienced inequality, where I had experienced situations that you could quite easily file under homophobia. And I did the talk, and all was well until it went live. And then, of course, when it went live on YouTube, I started getting the abuse on my page and on my feed. I started getting the trolling. And where people were telling me to just block them or delete them and ignore them, I did the opposite. Every time somebody came, whether it was on the YouTube page or on my Facebook feed, Twitter, wherever it was, every time somebody said something that was anti what I was saying, or that had the polar opposite view, I entered into a discussion with them. I asked them, tell me why. Can you tell me more about this? Where's this opinion come from? Why do you believe that? What about this? And in so many cases, we managed to have a really good debate, to the point where a couple of the ones who were really, if you wanted to bring politics into it, were much more right wing in their approach, were saying, thank you for talking to me about this. Nobody's actually wanted to go there with me before. You know, nobody's taken the time to listen. Are you going to do some more? Will you do another talk? I would like to learn more. And that for me was beautiful. And we need to do more of that. There are going to be situations in life, whether they're the bigger issues, you know, your homophobia, your racism, your faith, your religion, or whether it's issues that happen to us on a personal level. When I've lost people, you know, you've lost your child and your wife. There are going to be issues that hit us all where we are naturally going to feel really angry. Anger is a natural reaction to things that happen, and there's nothing wrong with being angry, but I do think we need to pay more attention to what we are doing with that anger. You know, we can't just rant and rave, and the energy we put out there through anger isn't going to turn into little daisies and float back down to the earth and be repopulated as beauty. We've got to be careful where we're firing those shadow arrows. I think it's our responsibility to deal with our own anger in a productive way. And I also think it's our individual responsibility to park our polarized views for a moment and to listen. We can go into a discussion with somebody else. It doesn't mean that we're going to have to change our minds, but we can grow and we can learn and we can develop. And I think that's where we're going wrong. We're not listening. And hey, I don't have the answer to everything. I don't know. Just as there are people out there who aren't gay, somebody would say, well, they have straight privilege. Yeah, I have white privilege. I do my best. I'm learning. I'm willing to learn more. I will say the wrong things. I will make mistakes, but I'm also always willing to say, tell me, help me to understand, help me to learn, help me to grow. I'm really sorry if I said something wrong, but help me to understand at a deeper level so that I can stand with you, so that I can help, so that I can help to educate other people. And you can apply that to anything. We need to listen more. Talking comes after the listening.
Brilliant. No, that's really good. And the thing from the message I'm trying to give out, which kind of follows a very similar vein, is why I think it's important that we talk. Because for me, again, slightly from a biblical point of view, I believe there's two arguments. You're either for good or you're for evil. And I think throughout the world, not splitting right down the middle, I think there's a lot of grey in there.
Massively.
But I think predominantly there are those like yourself, me, Chase is another one who has a big voice out there, where you're just trying to get people to see the other side, you know, and it's not about left wing, not about right wing, not about central. It's about, hold on, we're all on one planet, we're all on the same, you know, we're all in the same world, we're all trying to get along, we're all trying to find the answers to life. But if we keep going on it from this leftist view or this rightist view or this God view or this, I mean, I have a long-term friend, just to give a quick example, you know, both members of the church, he's lost his faith, but he's gone so far the opposite, anti, that you can't even have a conversation with him, because it does boil up that tension, it does boil up that anger and frustration. And what I have done, I've said, look, if you don't believe what I believe, that's fine. I respect that. But don't attack me because I believe. You know what I mean? And tell me what you think, a little bit like what you just said. Tell me what you think. Tell me how you're dealing with life. Tell me how you're coping. But, you know, please, please, please stop attacking me. And I think, just kind of in closing, Taz, I think that's where we as a humanity faced our biggest challenge. Because I think we have, I call it cognitive dissonance.
We do have massive cognitive dissonance.
We put the clogs in the ears. You know, we need to get the wax out. We need to open up, and we need to start. And you've made me think of something different, because I was just about to say talk more. No, even my mind has switched now to I need to listen more. You know, so that's what I've got out of this conversation, is why we need to have that open discussion, allow people to speak, irrespective of what their thoughts or how they feel, and not judge. Not judge. Now, the Bible tells us not to judge, and I think that's kind of what you've said as well. So, first of all, really grateful for you coming on board, and for those of you who are perhaps watching this, this is Paul Gunson from the Ark. I'd like you to like and subscribe, and maybe even share this with other people, because I think Taz has hit some really important messages. So just last 2 minutes, Taz, I want you to close for us in. I was always impressed by your book, Unleash Your Awesomeness. Just very, very quickly, where did the title come from? What inspired it? And what is your final message through that book?
I'd been using Unleash Your Awesome as a hashtag for a while, and I can't tell you honestly where it came from. It's one of those download moments where it just dropped in. And it's an interesting one because with my background as a journalist and an editor, of course, it should technically be Unleash Your Awesomeness, but it doesn't scan as well. So we're going for Unleash Your Awesome. The books, I've written 2. I've got 3 more on the go. I've contributed chapters and to so many others. My first book was Whispers from the Earth, which is more spiritual. It's my take on what the teaching stories from these lands will be, not with any particular religion attached, but in a kind of old fable kind of way. And then Unleash Your Awesome is more, it's kind of semi-biographical, but it covers everything from self-belief, self-worth, charging for your products and services properly if you're in business, finding ways to rewire your mind to be happier, to be more positive, finding ways to flip your negatives. And one of the reasons I wrote that is I had so many people asking me for coaching, so many people coming to me for help, and there's only 24 hours in every day. So for people who perhaps want to work with me, haven't quite got a flavour of me yet, I'd say read that. And also for people who want to get a good Tazzing, but they're in a position where they don't yet currently believe they can afford me, I would say get that book. There are challenges all the way through it, and I made it as much as I could to be an interactive coaching session in a book or series of. Brilliant. So that's right. You can get them from my website, tazthornton.com.
I was just going to ask you how can people get in touch with you, but you've just done it. So
tazthornton.com. Search for me anywhere on social media. I'm pretty much everywhere. Apart from Snapchat, I just pretend to be there, but I'm not really.
Well, it's been really great speaking to you, Taz, and I want to thank you. I know you're an extremely popular and busy person, and you're in such high demand around the world now. You're not just UK based. And I do think you're awesome. And I know the two occasions that I've heard you in, I think it was Liverpool and, sorry, it wasn't Liverpool, it was Manchester.
Manchester, yeah.
I don't know where the other one was, but both times extremely impressed with your work. And I want to wish you well. I want to
you too.
Hope that you can continue to inspire people and lead them and guide them. And thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Paul. Chase, thanks to you too. Thanks for holding such a beautiful space. It's been a lovely experience to be with you.
Thanks very much. Take care, Taz, and
you too.
Take care. God bless.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.